welcome everyone to our very first equine event with our Adored Beast Apothecary Director of Equine, Sarah Griffiths. Thank you for putting this together, Sarah. I'm your host, Steph B. Tonight, we're going to talk about seasonal support for our equine companions. And a point to ponder, actually, Sarah, during one of our test sessions, you brought this up, and it was something that's been top of mind for me since you said it, is that consider us when we adjust to things like time change. We were just talking about this off air. It takes us a couple of days to kind of, get back into the groove. But
Yes.
think about our equine companions, our horses, and you said this best, they spend the majority of their time outside.
Yes.
So when things like this happen, it really affects them on a deeper level than perhaps someone like myself or yourself.
Yes. Yeah, they just can't get away from it, right? They're in it.
Yeah, definitely. That's their habitat, their home.
Yeah.
So Sarah put together a presentation for this evening. We're going to talk all about seasonal support for horses, and she's open to taking Q&A at the end of the session. If you've got questions and you're on the meeting with us live, please do me a favor and put them in the Q&A area at the bottom of this call. Let's keep the chat open for banter while the presentation's going on. I'll throw links in there. And without further ado, let's get going. Our very first Adored Beast Apothecary equine presentation.
So exciting. So hi guys, I'm Sarah. I don't know if you have met me before or not, but I am the equine director for the Adored Beast Apothecary. So it's kind of a newer venture for us to be doing the equine products. So we have 3 that we've launched so far, and we're really excited about them. And I wanted to come on and do some education sessions for you guys to get to know me. Feel free to always be open to ask questions. I just want to give people a little bit more of an idea of really easy things that you can do for your horses that make such a big difference for them, as far as seasonal changes. And then we have a couple more coming up later on, but today's is just specifically on seasonal changes. 'Tis the season. So it's spring, and we're all kind of getting used to the longer days, which is a really nice time of the year. All the flowers are starting to grow. Lots of different plants are starting to pop up, and the horses really are in the midst of all of that. And they, depending on how they're living, there are different things that we can do to help make that transition for them really easy and as stress-free as possible. So I have put together a PowerPoint presentation for you guys. It's not very long, so I'm just going to fly through these and just to give you some tips and tricks and ideas for things that you can keep in your mind as the seasons are rotating for your horses. So I'm just going to try and share my screen here. There we go. Okay, Steph, if you can let me know if you can see
Looks great,
that.
Sarah. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So so welcome to our first lecture on equine seasonal support from the Adored Beast Apothecary. So Julie and I know you guys all know Julie. She's our founder of Adored Beast Apothecary. And I have been working with Julie for, I think it's like 21 or 22 years now. So I met her when I was 17, and I worked in her clinic, and we have done a ton of different projects together, but I got to work with her really heavily in the Adored Beast Veterinary Hospital, and working with the vets there, who were all amazing as well. And I ended up going to school as Julie decided that she thought that I needed to go to homeopathic school, and I said, well, okay, let's do it. And so I went to homeopathic school while I was working at hospital. So I got to do the human course, which is a 4-year course, alongside working in the clinic full time and doing shadowing Julie and watching what she was doing with the animals in her clinic. So we had human clinic and animal clinic, and it was really intense for about 4 years there. And I have been riding horses since I was a little kid. And more recently, I've started, I now own my own horse. I had just recently, in the last 5 years, started my own young horse. And I ride dressage, and he's going to be competing at 2nd level this year. So that's really exciting. And Kingsley has a little bit of a story behind him, which some of you might know, that he was, unbeknownst to me at the time, born with only 1 kidney. And so I really had to put all of my tools to work, and all of my homeopathic, herbal, nutrition, everything skills to the test to figure out a non-conventional way to take care of Kingsley as best I could to preserve his kidney function. So luckily I had Julia help me, and with my training I did figure out a way, and out of that, it really inspired me to understand that every horse can actually be taken care of this way, and not that horses don't need the conventional interventions sometimes, but there's so much that we can do ourselves to ensure that our horses have that day-to-day care, so that we don't have to always be relying on our vet as much as we might be doing at the current time. So it's been really interesting for me to see how these products have started to help horses since we've released them, because it's just been Julie and me kind of testing them out for the last couple of years. So it's really exciting to hear that more people are having some really good success with them. And especially now that we're going into the spring here, there's so many things that start to happen during this time for them, and it's mostly due to the light change. The studies have shown that the light and the darkness, especially in our northern hemisphere, really drastically affects a whole bunch of things in the horse, and also in us and our dogs and cats too. And with horses, because they live outside, they're never really indoors unless they come into a barn at night, and they're just absolutely shut in. They're dealing with natural light all the time, so they're very finely tuned to that light and dark cycle. So as soon as there's even a hint of the light changing to the more light, less darkness, we get coat shedding, we get a new coat growing in, we get increased hoof growth. A lot of people notice that their horses start growing more foot in the spring. Behavioral and hormonal changes, big time heat cycles in mares at this time of year. Some of them are kind of off the charts. So we all know a grumpy mare in the spring. And allergies can become a more prevalent thing as the spring rolls around, and skin and respiratory issues are more common. And this is partially not just because of what's floating around in the air, but also with what's happening with their circadian rhythm, which is how their bodies kind of have this 24-hour cycle where they have a upregulation and downregulation every single day. So that gets massively changed by the light and the dark that they are dealing with. And then changes in foraging patterns is another big one as well. A lot of horses, especially where I am in BC, we have a lot of rain in the spring and a lot of rain in the winter. So we don't usually turn our horses out on field in the winter and the spring, because it's so wet that if we do that, we run the risk of our horses slipping and having injuries. And also it just tears up the ground so that we have no grass for the entire year. So it's better to have grass for 6 months than it is to have no grass at all. So we kind of shift them around as the seasons change. So that whole thing, all of those things make for kind of a good type of stress, but a stress nonetheless, in that there's change going on that they biologically have to deal with. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, there we go. So what is the circadian rhythm? So it's the biological clock that all mammals have, and it's affected largely by light and darkness. It's a 24-hour cycle that is affected by the red light, or the blue light in the morning, and then gradually changing into that red light at night, and then the darkness. So the body knows what to do at what times of day based on the light, which is really cool. And it naturally changes with the seasons as well. So as we get that gradual increase in daylight, a lot of things start to get stimulated to start growing and moving around, and hormones kind of raging, and all of these things. It's breeding season. So winter to spring is a pretty significant one, and then summer to fall is that down regulation. So there's a whole other end of things, where this time of year is probably, their body's starting to wake up more and get more active. And then as the fall comes, then we start to have that down regulation of the body starting to wind down a little bit more. So for seamless transitions into these seasons, it is really important to support them during those big times of change. So the circadian rhythm, I was just checking out to see what I could find really quickly on studies for what systems are affected by the circadian rhythm. And basically all of them are, but these were some really neat ones that I found. So it affects hormonal pathways: cortisol, serotonin, melatonin, dopamine, insulin. So if you have horses with Cushing's, you have horses with crazy estrus cycles, those are things that will definitely get affected by these seasonal shifts. It affects the immune system, and it also affects histamine regulation. So if you have a horse that has any type of allergy, a lot of horses start to get hives at this time of year, asthma, and sometimes even systemic inflammation. And that can actually be caused by the internal metabolic immune workings of what's happening with your horse during that time, rather than the external world. It's a combination of both things. So and then it also affects the GI function. So it actually changes the way that the which microbiota are in the how many can populate. So in the summer, they have a different microbiome system than they do in the winter. So as the season changes, that change in their microbiome is also happening. So it also affects their metabolite regulation. So if they have a very specific way that they're digesting food in the winter versus in the spring to summer. So it starts to affect, if they already have an underlying digestive concern, you may see like gastrointestinal issues coming up in the spring, just because your horse is going through this change. And then it also affects liver function, which I thought was really, really interesting, because I knew that it did, but I didn't know that it actually affects the gene transcription of the liver, which is really cool. So the liver definitely needs support during this time, because it's kind of up regulating to deal with all of these shifts and all of these changes. It also affects the musculoskeletal system, which was also really interesting. And this was specifically done on horses, performance horses, and it affects their locomotor activity and their skeletal muscle gene expression, which is really cool. So if you have had a specific training program in the winter months, and then you have the exact same training program going into the spring, and some people will notice that their horses go through a period where they just don't have as much stamina as they did. They might be stiffer, more cranky, more a little bit behaviorally grumpy about bending or doing different things in their sport. And that's actually partially due to the circadian rhythm changes as well, which I thought was really cool. And then it also stimulates a lot of hoof and hair growth. So we have to make sure our hair is coming out more and they're getting groomed all the time, because we all know how fun it is to groom a horse that's shedding out its coat. It ends up all over your house, even when the horse was not in your house. So systems that need support, I put them all down, and then I just really realized that basically every system needs to be supported. So all of these systems are interconnected, as we kind of know, if you're looking at it from a holistic point of view. So there are a lot of support methods that you can use that will cover multiple systems at the same time, which is really cool. And for horses, we're going to talk specifically about what is really appropriate for them. So, and then I just wanted to really quickly talk about leaky gut syndrome, which is something that most people have kind of heard of at some point. It's more well studied in humans than it is in horses. But there are so many gastrointestinal diseases that can happen with horses, particularly ulcers and colic. And the thing that we're starting to realize more and more about the gut is that it actually is a huge part of the whole entire body. So it regulates immune function, it regulates metabolic function, nervous system function, all of these different parts of the body. It can affect their joint health and things that you just wouldn't even really think to connect to the GI system. But unless the GI system is really healthy, then any of these circadian rhythm shifts the symptoms, negative symptoms, if your horse has a specific issue, can be compounded by an underlying gut related issue. So it's really important to make sure that you're supporting the gut. I personally like to support the gut at every time of the year, but especially in the spring and the fall, and with really quality gut support. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. So herbs for seasonal support. There's tons and tons of herbs out there for horses that are safe to use, and I have not mentioned them all here because this will be a book. But I've taken the top 5 that I think are kind of most important for this time of the year. So dandelion root is a huge one. Actually, any part of the dandelion is is the most common herb on the planet. It is also one of the most nutritious herbs for horses, as far as that goes. It's a medicinal and nutritive herb, and it supports bile secretion, digestion, liver and kidney function, and inflammatory modulation. So all of these things that we've been talking about, it can help to support all of those pieces so that your horse doesn't have to deal with it all on its own. It helps to what would be the word, optimize their system and their liver function. Milk thistle is another one which supports the liver cell membranes, and it also helps to support liver function and detoxification. It's really well studied in many different animals, including horses and humans. For that very reason, it's pretty well known. Greater celandine is another one that is a portal system support, which means it supports the kidney, the liver, the pancreas, all of those organs involved in the digestive system, the kidneys, the intestine, and also the lungs. So this is where I was talking about how you can kind of cover different systems with the same herb. So we have the lungs. So if you have a horse with asthma, greater celandine would be a really, really good one to think of for them. And oftentimes they're dealing with some level of interstitial stress, which is the interstitial linings are like your lungs, your gut, your bladder, your bowel, your uterus. All of those have that mucosal lining, and those are really well supported by this herb. Barberry is another one. So that one actually inhibits pathogenic bacteria in the gut. So as your horse's microbiota is shifting from its winter version to its summer version, it can help make that shift, that transition easier by not allowing pathogenic strains to get too out of control and cause, either diarrhea or, dry manure, or ulcers, or any kind of colic, like impaction colic and things like that. So that's another really great one. It also is great for gastritis. And then Vitex is also known as chasteberry. And that is a really great one for mares. It's a hormonal normalizer. It really helps mares through this heat cycles when they're having, a lot, like really big expressions in their heat cycles, where for a fact that they're really uncomfortable and they're just going insane. It can be really great for them. And then it's also really great for mares that have just been recently weaned from their foals, that sometimes that hormone cycle can start to rev up again once they don't have their foal with them anymore. And then licorice root is another one that is a really powerful intestinal support. It helps to support the mucosal lining of the intestinal tract, and it also has been shown to improve intestinal circulation and better turnover and repair of the intestinal cells. So that's a really big plus in all areas. Slippery elm is another one that's really well studied for intestinal support, uterine support, respiratory and urinary support. It also protects against ulcers, colitis, diverticulitis, and acidity. So you want to help your horse to have as much gut support in the spring as humanly possible. So that's a really great herb for that. A lot of people have heard of slippery elm. And marshmallow root, which is another really popular one. And it has affinities for the skin, the respiratory system, the digestive system, and the urinary system. So it is a really amazing one to rotate on and off of during the seasons. And then raspberry leaf is another one that I like to use in the spring, especially for mares. And that can reduce uterine inflammation, and it also supports healthy skin and hair coat. So it's not just for mares. It can also be for horses that are having trouble growing their coat out, having trouble shedding their coat out. And it's also an amazing nutritive. So it's high in vitamin C. And so you can use it for geldings and stallions as well. So with all of these herbs, with herbs in general, I like to rotate on and off of them for the most part. So not to be using them all the time, because they kind of lose their efficacy if you use them every single day for the entire year. So I always like to support them with different herbs during the different times of the year, so that we're dealing with what's going on at that time. So generally I like to do these ones for about 2 to 3 months during this really big shift. And then we go on to other ones as the summer rolls in. Yeah, so healing foods and nutraceuticals. I only going to mention 3 here. So basically, like really good forage, obviously, is number 1. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But omega-3s are really important. Most horses are super lacking in them, and maybe can get away with it for their younger years. But as they get older, all of those well-known pieces that it's known to help, digestive, hormonal, immune, skin, eyes, hair coat, hooves, and the joints as well, which I didn't put on there. Those are all really affected by how much omega-3 is in your horse's diet. It's really hard to get it into the diet in enough quantity unless you're actually supplementing with it. So for horses, I like to use the plant-based version, which is either flax or camelina. And I also use the flax oil and the flax meals, because the meal has its own medicinal qualities, as far as it's a great hormone regulator. So another one for mares, if you're having issues with them, get a good organic flaxseed with and if you can freshly grind it yourself, it's always the best. And then a really good quality oil for specifically to bump up your omega-3s as well. And then probiotics is a must, especially for horses that don't get a lot of pasture turnout, and they're not eating dirt, and they're not, doing all of that. Probiotics are something that I think horses should have access to all the time, especially if they're living on what I like to call like dead ground. So if they have access to grass and pasture in the summertime and the fall, then you might want to rotate off of your probiotics, let them have their grass, and then in the wintertime, then you would put them back on. In the springtime, you could have them on it as well. So and I actually use probiotics all year round with my horses, and I have not found any issues with it. But if you want to make it more cost effective, or you're working on a budget, you can always fit it in where it's the most seasonally appropriate for them, and it can make such a huge difference for them. And then N-Acetyl Glucosamine is another one, which is more commonly known as NAG. I do recommend to use a plant-derived version of that. And it supports the interstitial linings of the body, like I was talking about before. And it has an affinity for the uterine lining, the gut lining, bladder, and the lungs as well. So really important if you have a horse that has really crazy discomfort during heat cycles, and also asthmatic horses do quite well on it as well. And then I just wanted to mention that there are some other puzzle pieces that are really important to pay attention to. Obviously, herbs and supplements are great, but you should also make sure that your horse is getting enough adequate minerals in their diet, which is a really big one. A lot of horses are mineral deficient. And so if you're not sure about that, it's good to have a mineral and vitamin analysis done, and you can have that done via blood work from your veterinarian. And it's also a good idea to put or to get a hay analysis done if your hay provider isn't doing that. And you can read my blog that I wrote on hay, how to read a hay analysis. And I think Steph will throw it in the chat there for you guys. And it just goes through how to read that analysis and how to know, if they're getting enough of everything with that type of hay, or if you have to add some things in there. Doing a stress assessment with your horse to see if there's any areas where you can help them. If you feel like there is stress that they might be holding on to. So that could be just not enough movement on a regular basis, or being housed next to a horse that stresses them out, or any number of different things. But if you can kind of pinpoint things that may be causing your horse stress, it can help to reduce cortisol, which is a really negative feedback loop into the whole hormonal system if they're not, you're not paying attention to that stuff. So that's really important. And eliminating glyphosate, which a lot of people don't even know that they're feeding glyphosate. But glyphosate is also known as Roundup. So it's in so many different feeds, a lot of feeds that are out there on the market for horses, unless they're certified organic. They're most likely have ingredients that are sprayed with glyphosate. So the most highly sprayed is beet pulp. And then corn, wheat, soy is massively huge as well. And so you want to make sure that you're eliminating glyphosate from their diet completely, because it is one of the best known hormone dysregulators that there is, and it's also patented as an antibiotic. So if they're eating that every day, it's going to affect their gut health. It's going to affect their hormonal health as well. Sugar and starch is another one that really needs to be basically eliminated, or just in really small amounts with really lots and lots of fiber, because that also can disrupt the hormone insulin, which we have probably all know a horse that is insulin resistant. So that's really important as well. And employing homeopathy is another great way to help your horses. It's super gentle, it's super effective. You can use it even if your horse is on medications, and you can use it with all the other herbs and supplements, and there's no contraindications with it because of the type of medicine that it is. So if you're not quite sure what your horse might need, it's probably best to talk to a homeopath. If you've tried using homeopathic remedies yourself and haven't had a lot of success, you might have more success with employing a homeopath to deal with the more chronic situation that's going on. So homeopathy can be used acutely, and it can also be used more in a chronic situation. So and it's best to talk to a homeopath if you need help with a chronic problem. So that's all of my slides. So thanks so much for listening. And there's that. And I'll just stop sharing my screen now. But if you guys want any more information on, there are quite a few blogs on the Adored Beast Apothecary blog that are equine specific. And I'm also here for a bit to answer questions if you guys have any. I see a few popping up.
Yes, I'm going to give the mic to Laureen. She's got a couple. And let me just throw this link for everyone who is into equine. There's the link to all Adored Beast equine blogs. And most of them, Sarah is the one that did the research behind them and has helped us with publishing them. So Laureen, let me give you the mic here. Let's see if this works, and you can ask your questions. Hey, is that working?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. So first of all, I was super excited to hear you were doing this. I've been lobbying with a lot of people on addressing all of these issues with horses, not just dogs and cats.
Yeah.
I've been a professional for over 40 years, and I've been training and raising horses for a long, long time. And along with my dog, this has become a huge issue with me
Yeah.
without going into a ton of details. But I have to say, with addressing gut health, and over vaccination, which is a huge, huge topic,
Yes.
and all of the things that we talk about with the dogs and cats in particular. My horses are about 20 and 24 years old. They're both retired performance horses, warm bloods. They have never been better, healthier, better, more energy, everything. I mean, I'm just thoroughly blown away by the change that both of them have made in the last, it's probably been about 2, 3, 4 years
Oh,
that I've been working on a lot of these things.
yeah.
And I'm even to the point where I want to actually start showing one of them again,
Oh, that's
despite the fact that he's going to be 20 years old, but they neither one look it. They don't
Yeah.
look it, they don't act it, they don't feel it. It's amazing. I have to say this. I just had to say all that.
That's
But
awesome.
one question that I had lots of questions that pop up, but one was, I guess I heard you say that it was possible to not do the probiotics in the summer if they're on pasture, and all that kind of thing. And I do get that, and have wondered about that. But do you have any feelings on whether there should be changes in the types of probiotics that
Yes.
are fed at different times of year?
Yep, for sure. You can, we're working on some alternative strains. We just have the one out right now, but we are working on doing another bunch of equine specific strains that you can rotate with if you want to do probiotics all the time, because it is good to give them breaks in between the probiotics, unless you're finding that they are having like negative effects from coming off of them. So with my horse in particular, he's with his kidney related stuff, I test his blood every 3 months. And I did that for a year, and I kind of played around with taking him on and off of the gut soothe. And I found that his kidney values are normal if he's on it, and they're not normal when he's not on it. So I decided for him that I was just going to leave him on it forever. And he has not had any issues with that. I do drop the dosage down for him in the summer when he goes on the grass. So in the winter time, he gets the double dose, like 2 teaspoons a day, and then in the summer he gets 1. So you can do that. And then, yes, if you want to rotate with different strains, you can also use different companies to try and get all those different strains in. And then eventually we will, fingers crossed, in the foreseeable future, have another one that's totally different from the one that we have out now.
That would be awesome if you did, because I have gone through and researched so many different ones, and I have found one just before AB came out with their gut one for the horses,
Oh yeah.
which is similar
Yeah.
to that, and I'm having great success with it.
Great.
And because I like the strains that are in it, and it's the only one I found that has so many different strains.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to find. Usually you can only find like one strain.
Yes.
And
I
I'm
think
totally,
there's one that you can get out here pretty easily, and it has 4 or 5 strains in it, and all the veterinarians here recommend it. And ours has 15 strains in it, and one of them is equine specific. So that means that it's equine derived, and it comes from healthy horse manure, and has gone through all of this scientific testing to show that it helps with immune modulation, and it goes from one end of the horse to the other end of the horse, and it lives throughout the whole entire system. And it's been shown to have all these multi-layered effects on producing like postbiotics that are really, really beneficial. And yeah, I have a PowerPoint presentation in the works for another lecture that we're going to do that shows why equine specific strains are so cool when it comes to you know, when you're looking at species specific rather than using probiotics that we know are good for people. These ones are specifically been shown to work really well in horses, and they come from horses. So it's really interesting to see, because this is kind of a newer thing. Probiotics are pretty well known, but species specific strains are not well understood yet. And so the more of them that become available, and the more people start using them, we start to get all of these case pictures of how they're working. And I know the probiotic company that we deal with, they also do probiotics for livestock, for chickens, pigs, all different kinds of animals. And then they do companion animals as well. And one of the coolest things I found with them is with pig farming. Pigs are so hard to farm without antibiotics because they carry all of these diseases that can really affect getting them from one stage to the next. And with the probiotics that they have derived, they have been using them in these big farms, and they're actually being able to come off of their antibiotics and all their antibiotic programs and just be using these probiotic strains instead, which is like completely unheard of. Like a lot of people don't even know you can do that. So and that's just one application of so many things that species specific probiotics can do. So it's really exciting. I think we don't even really know all the things that they can do.
Oh my gosh, it's such a huge topic.
It is. It's
I will say another thing along this line, because I know people are listening and I think it's good for them to hear about my experimenting too. But since I have addressed gut health, which I've become as fanatic about that as Julie is,
Yes.
my one horse in particular used to eat poop all the time, most especially in the winter and in the spring, actually, not really winter more so as much as spring. He
Yeah.
doesn't do that anymore. They don't chew on random things anymore like they do. Also, the really interesting thing is that I have a mare who's always fat. She's the older one. She's 24. She eats a lot, in an incredible amount of food constantly. I don't ration her particularly. I do when they're like in stalls or on hay and stuff like that, but not a ton. They have hay in front of them most of the time. But since I've addressed gut health with her, which I didn't think she was an issue as much as my gelding, she doesn't eat all the time.
Mm-hmm.
She eats normal. She actually stops eating. She actually sleeps. She rests. She does other things, which when I started noticing that was just blew me away. Because I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's probably due to how it is affecting her insulin regulation, because probiotics unbelievably can do that. And with horses that are eating constantly and hoover their hay really quickly, you know, you see, like I've seen horses that you know, they're trying to find like high fiber, low nutrient hay to add in so that they have something to chew on in between the more nutritious hay, because otherwise they'll get fat. And that's the first indicator to me that there could be some insulin related stuff going on, especially if they easy keepers as well. So it's really cool that you've had that result just from adding probiotics, because that is something.
Well, it's not just the probiotics. I worked on healing their gut. Specifically when I learned about leaky gut, probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
That was a huge light bulb for me.
Yes.
And I immediately started tackling everything, including myself, in sight on healing the gut. And
Yeah.
it's because of that. I don't really do anything different. In
It,
the wintertime, they're not on like this high quality stuff. They're on a much lower quality hay, so I can keep in front of them 24/7, and they get supplemented with alfalfa and stuff when they need it. But
yeah,
but specifically healing their gut, and specifically on that horse, um
it's really cool.
that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. It just never dawned on me. She looks good. She seems fine. I don't really have issues. She's not a colicky horse. None of the obvious signs, but she's always fat and she eats constantly. And yeah, she hoovers it in.
Yeah, so that's a really, really huge improvement. And when you get, sometimes we don't really know that something may be amiss until we do focus on that stuff. And then lo and behold, things change and we go, oh, maybe that was a problem before. And I didn't know, right? It's the same for us. We go along feeling like whatever we feel like, and then we start focusing on taking whatever, and we're like, I feel so much better. I felt like crap for so long and I didn't even know I felt like crap, right?
Yeah, I get that. It really, and my biggest focus was on my gelding, because he's more of my canary in the coal mine deal, and she's not. But when I was doing that, I'm like, well, you know what? If he's got an issue here, probably she does too. Maybe I should just treat her as if. And that was when I started seeing some of these amazing things when I did that. And now that's opened my eyes to realize, don't just take it for granted.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I,
every
I
person can benefit from it. It's not like, just because you have a problem that you can focus on it. Even if you don't think there's a problem, it can still be really beneficial for them.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's what
Regina,
I learned.
excuse me for butting in, but Regina, or I'm sorry, Lorraine, here's a nice comment from Regina on Facebook. She said, I still think that 20 is prime age for your horses.
Yeah.
Can we move on to the Phyto Synergy question here, because we've got a lot coming through and we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Yay.
Lorraine, your second question was about Phyto Synergy. Everyone at your house gets it. Should you take more than the 1/16 of a scoop, or is that something that's good for everyone every day?
Do you mean for horses?
Yes.
Yes.
I would probably use a little more for them. Like for Kingsley, I use a teaspoon. And I don't do it every day just because it is more expensive. So if you want to do it every day, you can. But I rotate Phyto Synergy. I do 3 times a week. And then I do kelp as well. I do that 3 times a week. And then I generally give, whatever it goes, 1 day on, 1 day off. And then I do use moringa leaf as well with him. So I kind of rotate through them. And if I run out of something, I just kind of, but those are all really good, super action packed, like vitamin, mineral, and all of them have different benefits to them. So I like to rotate through them.
Alrighty. Thank you. Thanks, Lorraine. Have a good night. Okay, there's a question here from Linda. Do you recommend a flax seed source?
Flax seed source, like a specific brand. You could, if you're going to use, like, if you want the best ever, you can go with a company. If you're in Canada, there is a company called Oli Naturals, which sells it's called Flax Unleashed, and it's the oil and the hulls, and then they recombine them. And it's got all the fibers in it, it's got the lignans in it, it's got the omega-3s in it, and so it helps with all the aspects. It's like basically the whole food version, but it's got a lot of oil in it as well. So it's if you don't want to use like the flax meal and the oil separately, you can use the Oli Naturals, and you can just use that. That's a really great one. In the US, I don't know that there's an equivalent, but you could use, as long as you're making sure that your flax is certified organic, because they do spray non-organic flax with glyphosate. So you want to make sure it's certified organic. You can get it from anywhere. It's probably best to purchase it in bulk from somewhere if you can. I know there's a place here where I can get it in bulk at a human herbal dispensary or a natural pharmacy, health food store. Sometimes they can special order it in for you as well. So that's probably what and then with the oils, just making sure that you're, buying smaller amounts and using them up quickly so that they don't go rancid. So you don't have a big, huge bottle of it on the shelf for months on end, and to refrigerate it as well.
Give me a slap on the wrist if I'm wrong here, but I believe that Costco sells organic flax.
Oh, it's possible.
And it's a, Costco size. It's a pretty hefty little bag for a reasonable price. Just double check that it's organic though.
Okay.
To be positive. Okay, Jane. Is there a homeopathic dewormer that you would suggest? Is there something there that we can use to help our horses?
Well, this is kind of what I do for worming. I use a rotation of herbs, because all of the herbs that I talked about will actually help to reduce parasite load. If the gut is healthy, that is your best defense against parasites. So I don't really care about getting a 0 count, because to me, that's kind of crazy with an animal that lives outside. For you to have a 0 count of eggs and parasites, it means that you're drugging them on a regular basis to do that. I only use dewormers twice a year if needed. I do regular fecal testing, and I have not had to give my horses dewormer. I gave my one guy, when he was very young, he had too many worms, so we gave him a dewormer at that time, but I only do it if there is an actual problem. So instead of just, making it a part of your routine, I do the testing. It's only $30 to get a fecal test done. It's not always completely accurate if you're just doing one, but if you do them, every time you see your veterinarian, every time they get their teeth done, every time they have a checkup or whatever it is, if you get one done on a regular basis, and sometimes they'll even let you get one and send it into their clinic, more often if you think that you need to, then you can do that. And if there's an indication that your horse has a problem, they have a high count in their fecal sample, or they're having actual physical symptoms of worm issues, then I would do it. But you can use as long as they're getting the correct nutrition, they're getting really good gut support, that they're functioning correctly, a small parasite load is not an issue. It's when it becomes an infestation that it's a problem, and generally that happens with some preceding factor like gut disease or immune system issues, or young horses, really young horses, and really old horses are really prone to it. So it's really more about assessing what your horse needs. But I don't deworm my horses on a regular basis. I only do it if there's an issue. There are some herbal dewormers, homeopathics. I don't really know if there are specifically for horses, but there are some. I think BioStar in the US has a really good one. And I think you can get it shipped to Canada as well, but don't quote me on that.
And I think Augustine Approved is ringing a bell for me, but perhaps that's canine. But BioStar has a ton, and their products are excellent.
Yeah, good.
Really quick, we have time for a few more questions, but for everyone that joined us tonight, thank you. Sarah hooked up a code if you're interested in supporting your horse. We've got 20% off our equine liver tonic right now, and the discount for that is seasonal 20. I'll put it in the chat for everyone. We'll go to another question, but if detox is something that's on your mind, it's a super easy way to get things going, and it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Jill here, Sarah, do you recommend a place to buy herbs? We talked about this during one of our pre-meetings.
Yeah, so I like to buy mine from like a human herbal dispensary. So, and then they just have to be certified organic or wildcrafted. So sometimes I'll get them through, there's like, in Canada, we have a really good one called Harmonic Arts, and they do, you know, large sizes, small sizes, all different sizes. And then in the States, I think there was one is called like the Bulk Herbal Apothecary or something, but there's as long as you're making sure that they're certified organic or wildcrafted, just find them in as big a bulk size as you can. And sometimes like we have like a natural food market here called Nature's Fair, and they do bulk herbs in store, and they will order me boxes of herbs and flax and whatever else I want. And I can do it that way. Sometimes you can get it cheaper if you get it online, but then you have to pay for shipping. So it depends on how heavy it is.
Right.
So, but as long as you're getting it from somewhere that is organic, then it doesn't really matter where you get it from. Just
Thanks,
get the
Sarah.
best you can.
Thank you. One question here. This is an interesting one from Luke and Susan. Can the Equine Gut Soothe be shared with dogs? I know it's equine specific, but my dog eats horse poop occasionally. And I know Julie's talked about this as well. Like our dogs lick us. We're kind of sharing things.
Yes.
So is there any harm in sharing?
No, actually, I just saw Julie called me today, and she was like, I ran out of the dog gut soothe. Do you think I can give it to the horses? And I said, or to the horse one to the dogs. And I was like, of course you can. So yeah, it's basically I'll just tell you what I told her, which was to just use the same dosage for your dog with the horse one. The equine strain, you know, it even though it's not canine specific, well, neither are the other 14 strains in there. They're not equine specific. They're well known to help with dogs, cats, horses, humans. So to have that extra strain in there that we know is beneficial to horses, it's not going to hurt your dog to give it. And all of the ingredients are the same in the canine version as the dog or the horse version. So except for that equine specific strain.
Awesome. And I mean, I would think that the dogs kind of hang out in the barn, you know, like you said, things are
all day there. If they're around the horses, they're eating all kinds of other equine probiotics, and they eat horse poo. So.
Right. Okay, so hey, that wraps up episode 1, session 1 of our equine series. Sarah's got a few more booked for this year. Let me pull those up. She's going to be doing equine orthopedic and soundness support. That's Wednesday, May 18th. If you're on our email list, I'm going to send you a reminder. I'll also be talking about it on Facebook. And she's also got one here on Wednesday, June 15th. That'll be leaky gut in horses and solution for success. Laureen, I know you're going to be on that one. It's super important. We're going to be talking a lot more about equine. Sarah's organized these events. We're going to do education the first half and then Q&A the second half. Also, don't forget seasonal 20. If you want to start the liver tonic now, 20% off for everyone that attended. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for putting together the presentation and
coming on and listening. I hope it was helpful.
Definitely. Yeah. Here's to a 100 more successful events. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Okay, you guys have a good night.